you promised me.
Hey guys, welcome. You are on IntellectualRadio.com, and I am Lynn Sharif, and I am the Wise Wife, and you are joining me on the Wise Wife Radio Show. Folks, this is my 8th episode. I am so excited. There's no particular milestone, but I'm just excited that I actually did it. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But I'm here. So I'm grateful that you're here joining us today. And I want to check in with you, folks. I have been talking about this Deep Kiss Challenge. I'm going to post it on Facebook and Instagram. I started this a few weeks ago. There is a whole story behind it, but the Reader's Digest version is that I want for you as a married couple to be connected to your spouse, but not deep kissing for sex to be the outcome, but really just deep kissing just to stay connected to your spouse and to develop a level of intimacy that doesn't have to lead to sex. And so I'm okay if you even start with a side hug. You can start with the side hug every day and then maybe move on to the front hug and then a peck. I really want, though, for you to get to a deep kiss challenge. And that is our challenge with each other to stay connected. But we've got a very rich subject today. We're talking about communication overall. Communication is a really, really big umbrella. And if you think about it, it is so very complex. So think about it. It's like you have to think about what you mean to say versus what you actually said. And then what your spouse thinks they hear versus what they actually heard. And then it's what your spouse is saying versus what you think they said. So this is a really treacherous ground. It can be a lot. And a lot of us, we might not get it right. And so I always say, let us grow together. Let us learn together. And so to really dive into this subject, because we're going to actually look at one of the extremes, and that is the conflict communication. And how do we navigate conflict communication? And I would love for you guys to send me messages because I am learning how to do my social media. And so I am able to see your comments. So please drop questions in. I absolutely want to hear from you, some of the things that you've tried, all of that. And I have a friend of the show on with us today. A friend of the show. This is Minister Zenola Diggs. She was with us, remember, a few weeks ago. And Zenola has a master's of marriage and family therapy. She also has a master's in Christian counseling, and she is a licensed pastor. So welcome to the show, Minister Diggs. How are you tonight?
Hey, friend. I am wonderful tonight. Thank you for having me on.
Great. I'm excited to have you on, excited to have this conversation. And I want to hear about your experience because you counsel couples. And I'm sure that this has to be an area where a lot of couples are struggling. So what's been your experience?
Wow, where do I start? Well, it started off with me being married. Approximately, I would say, a little over 20 years ago. My ex-husband and I started off counseling couples through the church. Had no idea that we would have ever made it this far, or as far as we did. Starting off with a simple Sunday school class for married couples that evolved into us furthering our education to be able to counsel professionally other couples. So that had been a year over 20 years. Now, I know probably the first thing that pops in someone's mind is, okay, well, if you guys were doing this together and you said your ex-husband, well, sometimes what happens is that you find yourself making deposits into other people's lives and not depositing into your own, and it takes its toll. And so that's a story for another day. However, I did want to say that because I know, that's one of those things that determine whether you're legit or not. So, but I have years and years of experience. Have been married 27 years, together 32. So in all that span of time, there were wonderful times, and then there was times when I wait a minute, let's look at this again. And so, but anyway, it brings me here today as a professional counselor, mental health specialist, marriage and family therapist, as you mentioned before, and also a pastor of two churches here in Nashville. So, and one of your best friends, I'm claiming it. So anyway.
So there's something that I want to pull from what you just said, and I want to dispel the myth that a person who is a counselor, who is a pastor, is not having the same problems that you have. And just recognize that this is real, this is life. And me sitting here, and I shared this with you on the first show, that while I have been married for, we've been together almost 25 years, we've been married for 22, I also went through a divorce. And so a lot of the lessons that are coming from not the highs that we've had, but the lows that we've had too. And so we want to share it. So again, we can all learn together, we can grow together. So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said absolutely, absolutely.
So is conflict communication something that comes up a lot in your practice?
Mm-hmm.
How are couples presenting? What kinds of things? Of course, we know that you're just giving general descriptions, but what kinds of things have you seen as it relates to conflict communication amongst couples?
Oh, you name it. But one of the main things is probably three main things: sex, money, and what else? Sex, money, and education, employment. Those things. The sex isn't there, the money isn't there, someone isn't working, or they're not meeting my expectations. But it runs the gamut. And so I really can't put my finger on one particular thing, but those are the things that stand out the most in those cases.
Absolutely. You mentioned a lot of major issues that everyone deals with at some point in their marriage. But when I'm thinking about conflict communication, how people behave when they are having what I call intense fellowship. I call arguing intense fellowship. So,
well, it comes from not knowing really how to fight fair. Not knowing the difference between, I was just reading something, and you and I have discussed this before, the difference between complaining and criticizing. And when you don't know the difference, it causes conflict. And let me tell you what the difference is. When you're complaining about something, you're really talking about maybe a behavior or a desire that can be changed, or something that can be looked at again and corrected. When you're talking about a criticism, it's an attack. It's an attack. And so when we have attacks, we become defensive, and then defense turns into fight. And if you think about it, not to take up too much time, but think about going to a nice restaurant and your steak isn't done the way you like it. Well, you may complain to the server and say, hey, can you cook this a little bit more? Or maybe it's overdone. They take it back, they fix it, and they bring it back. That's good service. But when you criticize, it's like, well, this nasty restaurant, I'm never coming back here again. The steak is out. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I see the difference.
Can you hear the difference?
Absolutely. So one you can change.
It's all about, right. So it's all about the service that we render to one another to make the thing right.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I have said in the past, when you are communicating with your spouse, you have to be clear, but you also have to be kind. Clear is kind. So clear, not, so you can say something like, I want us to get healthy together. I really want us to work on our health. That would be clear. Unkind way of saying it would be, you're fat. So there is a difference in the way you communicate. And And I also want to speak to those, the communication style where when you get mad, you are going for the jugular.
Oh,
You,
yeah.
you are
Oh, yeah.
looking to go for the jugular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, guys, you know, you and I talk all the time, you know, off record, but one of the things, you know, I believe you and I had talked about is bringing a machete to, you know, to a, what do we say? You bring in the machete to get
A lover's
something.
quarrel,
Yeah, lover's
lover's
quarrel.
quarrel.
Yeah, you know, so choose the right, and I hate to even say weapon, but for the sake of conversation, you know, we're bringing the wrong weapon for the type of, I'll say, disagreement that we're having. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't take, you know, taking the other person out. Because if you think about it, when you're married or you're in a relationship, that person is also a part of you. So when you're
Absolutely.
killing off that person, a part of you dies along with it.
Yes, there is nothing to be gained from going for the
Absolutely.
jugular and attacking your spouse's, their character. That,
Right.
but how is it that people get there in the first place? And I recognize that we all know that marriage can be so challenging, and resentment can be one of the reasons why that may be coming out in your marriage, so that when an argument comes, you're mad about what happened that y'all didn't deal with 6 months ago, last year,
Mm-hmm.
2018. And so then something, because things that are swept under the rug that never get dealt with, it becomes a big bump in the rug, and it never goes away. So sometimes you really do have to dig deep, because you can start planting seeds of resentment.
Right. You know, you have to keep the thing the thing. Is, you know, what I always say, you know, we learn how to fight, especially as a culture. And we're not going to
Mhm.
let anybody, you know, get away with hitting us. We got to get our lick back, you know. But
Yes,
when you're in a relationship, you know, you have to understand, again, I'll go back to this again. You have to nurture the admiration and the love that first brought you together. You know, I always tell couples, go back to that time when things were good. Find out, you know, where was the breakdown. And the other thing is don't always look at the other person, but ask yourself, how am I contributing to this? How am I
absolutely.
contributing to this problem?
Because it takes two to
And
tango, and it's much easier to point the finger. But they say when you point one finger, you got three pointing back at yourself. Um,
absolutely,
but be
you know,
mature
and that's
enough to say, you know what, I know I have some part in this. And one thing
absolutely.
I had to learn to do, because again, it's taken me a while to get to a certain point. I had to acknowledge when I am really anxious about something else. It's going to come up
Mm-hmm.
as me being short. It's going to come up as me being curt, short, and sarcastic. And so
Mm-hmm.
me being able to step back and say, you know what, I'm tripping about what's happening with my manager. I'm somewhere else. So I apologize for how I came off. And I've talked
Right.
about apologies before, and that's an area that I've had to grow in, but really acknowledging when it's not, when it isn't you, but you're the
Mm-hmm.
closest person to me. So guess what? You get it.
You're in the line of fire. And so,
Yes.
but the reality of it is, Lynn, sometimes it is the other person. It is absolutely what I'm pissed off about. It's absolutely
It's
what I'm
you.
mad about. But there's a way to even communicate that. Instead of putting it all on the other person, you don't ever, or you always, or I can't stand it when you know, you can reframe that and say, when this happens, I feel,
Yes.
you know, or when you do this, it makes me feel, it makes me act.
Absolutely.
Open that for yourself and saying, wait a minute, now I'm doing some self checking, because now I'm seeing that when these things are occurring, I got some rearranging of my actions and my behaviors that needs to be done to help make this thing better. What are you going to do to meet me so we can get this thing right?
Yes. And one of the other things that's super important, I have, like, one of my issues is that I cannot stand being blamed for something that I didn't do. So I would be really extra sharp with my husband, but keep in mind that it's because of something that happened when I was a child. So it's really important, though, that you really have to look at yourself, and you do have to do the work to heal your, if it's past trauma, or all of those things are important, because if you don't, we called it bleeding on people that didn't cut you. Maybe your spouse did cut you, but maybe they didn't. Maybe it's you. Maybe you have some stuff you need to work through. And so I recognize that. So when that happens, now I realize that my reaction might be a slight overreaction just because of the baggage that I'm carrying from childhood.
Right. So, which goes back to what I was saying. Keep the thing the thing. Am I really mad at you because you didn't take out the garbage? Or am I mad because my mama or my daddy didn't show up when I wanted them to? And now the thing that you're doing is reminding me of that time where I felt collected or, dismissed.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it goes back to that. Years of stuff that happened before, but now I'm triggered.
Yes.
By something that someone did.
Have you had to deal with couples where when they have an argument that it's an all-out, not brawl, but a verbal brawl, cussing each other out, calling each other out their names? Have you dealt with that? And how have you challenged the couples that you have counseled?
Well, first of all, I don't allow that. In a counseling session, we have rules for engagement, and I've made that very clear up front. We're all adults here. Everyone has a right to their opinion, but we will respect one another. If they don't respect each other anywhere else, you will respect yourself in my presence. And even with that, they know, coming in, this is the place of respect. This is the respect zone. And believe it or not, when you start practicing respect and mutual admiration or regard for one another, it goes beyond the room, because then you realize I can get so much more done, being civilized and being contentious. And so, yes, to answer your question, there has been people come in with boxing gloves on, but they soon realize that that's not going to win. I mean, that's not the way to act or behave. So.
Yeah,
I don't allow it.
And I've talked on past shows about how to create a certain environment in your home. And part of that environment is absolutely nurtured by how you speak to each other. And even if you have been together for a long time, please and thank you go a long way.
Oh, yes.
Just being civil. Just being civil, because oftentimes when you're so familiar with someone, the level of civility that you have with your spouse, it really comes way under what you give to people that you work with or people that you go to church with or other people that you interact. So that same respect can absolutely be used in your home.
Right. And I have to say this for women, even not saying something sometimes is better than saying what comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Take that pause, when you can take that pause and say, wait a minute, give me a minute. You may have to ask for that minute, give me a moment. I'm going to answer you. I'm going to address that. But right in through here, I need a moment.
Absolutely. As women, we use way 2 to 3 times the amount of words that men use. And I know that I am really good at it. I have to work on my, I'm snarky. So snarky is, I always have a quick response. And so there are some times, and this has been lately, that I've just learned to just not say anything. Just hold it, because it'll come back up. It'll come back up, but you definitely can, get some space, because the other reason that you might be going in is because of anger. And so I need for folks to really to regulate themselves, just self-regulation. Like I realize that I'm going there. I'm going too far, and being able to pull yourself back. That's really, really key. Very, very key. So if you are a couple that has had unkind communication, y'all cuss each other out, or you go for the jugular, how do you come back from that? How can we help a couple come back from that? And the first thing that I think is super important because we want our marriages, we want our homes to be a safe place. I've talked about having your house be a haven. And so go back and look. Is there a time that your spouse has shared something with you and you then turned around and threw it back in their face when you were having an argument? Have you done that? And it's okay if you've done it, but the key is repent and don't do it again. Own up to it.
That's exactly what repent means. To have remorse and then turn away.
Absolutely. So repent for the times that you've thrown something back in your spouse's face. Use some information, because keep in mind that because you are married, you are the person that can hurt him or her the most, because we're right next to each other. And so I could just take this shank and I got you. But so let's turn away from that. And I hope I'm not talking to anybody on this, on either of these lives or on IntellectualRadio.com. But ladies, don't fight. Don't try to fight your man. Please don't do that.
No, because a fight is a fight. You know?
Yes.
When it comes to that, a fight is a fight. It don't matter if you're a woman or anything else. A fight is a fight. And the mistake that a lot of women make is, I'm going to step to this man and I'm going to fight him. And he's going to fight you like a man will fight a man. So, you can be gentle, you can be kind, you can be sweet and still win the fight.
Absolutely.
So,
that's what I'm really asking ladies to do. Be the one that he was dating. Be sweet and adorable. Don't be hard. Because, keep in mind that, we as women, we have to operate in the workplace. We have to do a lot of things where we really have to just, get ourselves leveled up and get ready. But I need for you to lay that down when you get home. Absolutely. Lay that down when you get home. And so Z, we do have a question that says, do we as women need to learn how to speak less, or should they work on listening more? Should we work on speaking less?
The answer to that is yes.
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes.
A straight yes.
Yes, and yes, Dr. Penn. We definitely have to work on speaking less, because as we know that we can out-talk our husbands. And there are times that we have to, because again, if you say it, when in the entire world has nagging ever gotten you what you wanted? Think about that. When has nagging gotten you what you wanted? And so saying something, if you say it, I know he hears it. He hears it. It's just that you just want to make sure. I just want to make sure you hear. So I'm going to say it again. And then, here we go. Absolutely. So say it and then leave it there. Say it, then leave it there. And in terms of listening more, yes, men do need to learn to listen more, because I have absolutely experienced where my husband he wasn't quite tuned in. And I talked about this because last week I was on He Said, She Said, which, by the way, is on IntellectualRadio.com. And I talked about something called interactive journaling. And this is a communication device. And it's the idea that there are some arguments, I have had them occur in my marriage. There are some things that we could talk about, and within 2 minutes, we are in the thick of some serious conversation, argument, just whatever. But interactive communication or interactive journaling really did help. It's where you actually write out what the issue is. You're able to communicate it without the facial expressions, without the sarcasm, without all of the things that happen when you're in face-to-face communication. Leave that journal somewhere and then have your spouse pick it up, and then they can answer. Because they're just sometimes that it takes a while to really be able to work through some of those more sensitive issues. And
right, and no, in the sake of time, I really want to make sure we say this to Lynn, is that you have to make sure you're that safe place, you're that soft place to land, so your spouse will even want to come back to you to make it right.
Absolutely.
The worst thing is being so contentious that it's like, I don't even want to go back to him. I don't even want to go back to her and talk to them anymore. And then that opens up a whole nother can of worms, someplace else. So even if things aren't, so great now or shaky now, make sure the foundation is still strong enough that when it's time to come back, they're coming back to you.
Yes, I want you ladies to be the soft place, where your husband, and again, if we have men listening, the same thing. And last week, you remember, I talked about emotional affairs potentially happening at work but where do they start? They would start with platonic relationship, and then you're talking and you're communicating, and then pretty soon someone else is easier to talk to than you are. And yes, we know that it's not real life. We know that they don't have to deal with your piles of laundry and, the fact that you can't get this thing done around that. And we know that it's not real, but guess what? It can be real unless you are very intentional about making sure that you can create that safe zone, that soft place for your spouse to be.
Right.
So
absolutely.
The other thing, this is on how can you come back. If you realize that your relationship is there, how can you come back from it? We talked about repenting for the times that you have thrown something in your spouse's face. Ladies, I'm asking you to not even come up with that kind of energy. Even if you're not ready to seriously throw some hands, there's a certain energy that you could be given that's conflict that you really don't want. You want no parts of that. So I need you to step back, give me soft and adorable. And then the other thing is, don't play the long game. This plotting and planning, oh, I got you.
Right.
I got you. Mm-hmm.
I can show you, but I can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you wind up having the stonewalling thing going on where I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to fold my arms. I'm just going to look at you. I'm just going to nod my head. But when you see it, you'll see it.
Yes, absolutely. So. I've been there. There was a period of time that I call it having a mask on. And my husband would kind of know because I would just fold my hands. I wouldn't say anything. I didn't have my arms crossed, but my hands were folded. I just became, what he said, just really formal. And so, yeah, I'm seething, but what he sees is, and that was my form of stonewalling. And that is really a dangerous place, folks. It's a very, very dangerous place because that plotting and planning that's going on in your head, you think that you're not arguing, but really you are. You are.
It's premeditated murder, actually, in a marriage. That's what it boils down to.
Definitely. And really a close cousin to this is silence. It's silence. And, how many of you have engaged in the silent treatment? I used to do that. I used to get so mad because we could have a disagreement and my husband could, he's mad about this, but then he'll start talking again. And I'm thinking, why are we talking? I'm still mad. Why are you talking? Yeah. And so I had to recognize that, you have to be able to flow out of that. But that was something that I just came up with. And so when I say grew up with. And so recognizing that stonewalling, silence, those are all things that are silent killers, for lack of a better term, in your marriage. So we really hope that we were able to provide you with some tips and tools for how to fight fair, how not to go for the jugular, and how not to create an unsafe space in your home. We don't want you to be hard. And we need for you to be soft and adorable, create that safe space. And again, if you've had some of these things and some of these transgressions, that's okay, because we can start today. It's a whole new day. If you wake up tomorrow, that's it. Say it again, Z.
I said it's not too late. It's not too late. If you even if the relationship fails, you don't have to throw in the total towel. Learn from it. Learn from it. So you won't be taking this baggage, someplace else.
Absolutely. And folks, if you want to speak with your spouse and you want to get some additional help for your marriage, reach out to Zenola. And I'm going to give you the email address. And if somebody could put it in the comments, and if I don't get it put in the comments, I will make sure that it comes in the comments for our replay audience. Hey, replay folks. But you can contact Zenola at zgreen523 at gmail.com.
Right.
Zgreen.
Green.
Zgreen523 at gmail.com. And I just love technology because you could be having a video conference with her and trying to work through some stuff. And so
absolutely, I'm here for you.
Absolutely. Zenola Diggs is a master of marriage and family therapy. She is also a master of Christian counseling and a licensed pastor. So definitely reach out to her at zgreen523 at gmail.com. And then if you would like to look at having a wife coach, I want you to go to my website, and that is lenthewisewife.com, lenthewisewife.com, and take a look at what I have there. And I just also found out, because there were some folks that did contact me and it went to my spam. So please know that I will be in contact with you this week, but lenthewisewife.com. Please contact me there and we can talk about coaching and someone to walk alongside you as you navigate this path. And so for small business owners, I also want you to hit me up at lensharif.com for all your commercial needs, because you should be advertising your business. So I definitely look forward to hearing from you through that website as well, lensharif.com. So folks, I am really excited about the conversation that we have had. I hope that you have learned something today. I really appreciate you. And we will be here again on next week at 7:00. We want to thank friend of the show, Zenola Diggs, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Z. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks. You all have a good night.
Be blessed.
Be blessed.